As I had mentioned yesterday, I believe maybe the day before, I have been attempting to go back through the videos that we've done since last June and try to compile and condense the information to put in one video. But it seems like every time I do that, I find one specific point that stands out, that demonstrates the absolute silliness of this story. Now, this is a man named Gary Wetzel. He's writing on Foxtrot Alpha, and this was 11 days after. And there's a bunch of really good information in this article in the sense that it will show you how absolutely wrong the quote-unquote experts were in the days right after the collision. One of the big mistakes that we had made, not having any information from the Navy, was assuming that the USS Fitzgerald was running parallel to the ACX Crystal. And then when the ACX Crystal makes her infamous turn to port, that the Fitzgerald didn't notice it and sailed right in front of it, and that's why the port side hit the starboard side, and that was the assumption we were all working from. Well, when the Navy came out with a story, we realized that allegedly, according to the Navy, that's not what happened. Then everything changed completely. But what it shows is that the captain of the Crystal lied multiple times in his statement. And this article here covers the two big ones now. And you'll see in here exactly how much experts had no clue what they were talking about. Here it talks about something tragic happening off the coast of Japan. Report from Reuters. Captain Ronald Devincula, who was in command, said that the destroyer failed to take evasive action or respond to warning signals that his ship tried for 10 minutes to avoid the oncoming destroyer. Now, anybody who's come to my video knows how laughable that is, because 10 minutes prior, instead of trying to turn to starboard, as he alleges, he turns to port. He also alleges that the Fitzgerald suddenly changed course to cross its path. And according to what the Navy's telling us, that the destroyer never did. That in response to the destroyer, Advincula claims his vessel steered hard to starboard, but was unable to avoid the collision that occurred in clear weather. Now, we do see at the very, very last minute, between 0128 and 0130, we do see a turn to starboard, but that wouldn't have been to avoid. That would have been to continue the collision course. And then here he talks about the confusion on the bridge, and that's why they went all the way 8 miles downrange and then turned around. Now, this Stephen Watkins is an information technology security consultant and master of open source intelligence gathering. His website, Vessel of Interest, has provided the best analysis of the collision available. And speaking to Foxtrot Alpha, he couldn't disagree more with the initial statements of the ACX Crystal's captain. Now, here's where this gets hilarious. The evidence provided by AS clearly shows a different story. The merchant was on autopilot, and very likely no one was on the bridge of the ACX Crystal at the time of the collision. If that's the case, then the captain's lying. And if the captain's lying, why would he lie? Why would he be monkeying with his transponders, as we have shown multiple times? Something that this expert didn't even find at that time. I've never made myself out to be some kind of an expert in naval matters, and I'm just an old Army guy, and I found what was going on with the transponder. Okay, so he talks about AIS here. He says, Watkins says that based on the AIS data he has seen, he has serious doubts about the statements made by the ACX Crystal's captain. Once again, why would he lie? Crossing situation would exonerate him. Talked about the 10-minute window, tried to avoid but was unable to, and he said, well, if after the first 5 minutes, why didn't the captain try something different? Well, clearly, large cargoes, it's not like you can say stern hard to starboard, and, the thing's going to react right away. So it's, this guy calling himself an expert is probably the most laughable thing about this. And it shows here, it talks about AIS, and he still alleges that nobody was aboard the bridge of the ACX Crystal at the time of this collision. Even though the captain says he saw it and flashed his lights, attempted to contact it. And we can see that clearly, because how in the world would we have that last little tiny change in course between 1628 and 1630 if someone wasn't aboard the bridge and trying to avoid it? The AIS data actually tells us it couldn't have been on autopilot. So once again, clearly this expert has no idea what he's talking about. And the second big point here that I wanted to cover, it also says here something also ridiculous. 3 minutes later, Crystal swung to starboard, but didn't stop. Within 6 minutes, the Crystal untangled herself from the destroyer. So they're saying that it hit it and then dragged it down that 10-minute path that we showed yesterday, that entire time. So he does his own little thing, but it's I want to get to this point where the captain says he was traveling in the same direction as the destroyer. And he does say that here. Just give me 1 second to find it. Here it is. One early report from GG Press also quoted the captain of the A6 Crystal as saying that we were sailing in the same direction as the U.S. destroyer was and then collided. And here, Mr. Expert says, most likely the Crystal was traveling faster than the destroyer. We know that's not true. And headed in the same direction. But being on a perpendicular angle, the Crystal would have provided a constant bearing. So all of this proven clearly not true. But expert analysis, showed us what we were supposed to believe. Now, what I've done is bring up this very beginning part of this video where we track the Crystal. And I want to show you something. What a lot of people don't realize, we had one ship moving at 18 knots this way and another one moving at 20 knots this way. So roughly they would have, in a half an hour's time, each traveled about 9 miles. 9 to 10 miles. So if you have a 9-mile line here and a 9-mile line here, 30 minutes prior, the distance between the two from sea level, they would have been over the horizon from each other. And I know the flat earthers are going to come out of the woodwork as I said that, but just ignore them. I'll try to get rid of them in the comments. But this was what the contact picture would have looked like, and this would have been 35 minutes prior. At that distance, I count no less than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, it's like 20. From their position, looking over the horizon toward where the Crystal was, they would have seen 20, 25 little tiny lights and dots at the very edge of the horizon at night, visually. There would have been no way to determine at this point, watchstanders or not, which one of these ships may or may not have been possibly on a collision course. Now, I've made this diagram here to just single out the two vessels, and this would have been the relative distance at about 110, 20 minutes prior to the collision. Because they're both moving roughly the same speed. The Crystal at 18 knots, the Fitzgerald at 20 knots. I've plugged in the distances. Here's roughly the location. And, this will show you about, what do we have here? 8 miles. So 8 miles here. They're roughly at 8 miles in closing. So they would have been roughly, 20, 25 minutes away. What this shows is that they were distance-wise, straight line, visually, almost, 16 to 12 miles. Now, I brought up this distance to horizon calculator. Even at 80 feet above sea level, the distance to horizon at 11 miles, you would have had to be 80 feet above sea level to see something 11 miles away. And we'll look at the report here, and they pretty much confirm this for us. And let's see if I can find that. Here it is, 0110, Fitzgerald, continued on course 190, 20 knots. Crystal was ahead on Fitzgerald's starboard side at a distance of 11 nautical miles. So, once again, 11 miles. To see it, you would have had to be 80 feet above sea level. Now, I'm sure the bridge of the Crystal is much higher than that, but it would have still been at the very edge of your visual range, way off on the horizon. Guys down on the railing of the Fitz, at that dark at night, would have seen a whole bunch of lights way out there and would never have been able to make any visual speed and course determinations to determine a threat. And here's the part of this that it shows you clearly the Navy is obfuscating data. They basically hired a cartoon artist to write this map of what happened, because here's the course of the fits, and then they just randomly take their crayons and make these little lines and things and dots, and this isn't even close to an accurate scale representation of what happened that evening. Not even close. Because I think they're trying to, way down here, represent this little spit of land right here just above the hand as being this little spit of land. And they're making the crystal do some kind of a V-shaped maneuver when it's really not. It was a very gentle turn, but enough to cause the collision. So I wanted to cover this today to show you how things have changed so much. And this idea that the crystal, if the crystal captain is lying, and he's been a captain of a vessel for 20 years, so clearly he knows coal regs, and he knows the rules of the road. The only reason, in this case, he would have to lie is if he was doing something he wasn't supposed to do, or if he was part of something that wasn't supposed to be going on. Because if he was just an innocent captain, and he would have absolutely been in the right. He could have said, look, we were in a crossing situation. This vessel came from my port. I had the right of way. I attempted to flash my lights, and he didn't get out of my way, and I did everything I could, but too bad. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying he was traveling in the same direction as the destroyer, when he wasn't. He was saying that he attempted to avoid her for 10 minutes prior, which, if we believe the Navy story, that's not possible. The only people that we've shown here that have a reason to lie and a history of lying is the Navy. They came out 36 hours later with a complete fictitious make-believe story about 0220. And then this other story about the sailor below decks at 256 that allegedly had access to Wi-Fi, Xavier Martin, that was WhatsApping his dad, when their story in the report says that berthing 2 was completely flooded. No one could have possibly been alive in it 15 minutes after the 0130 time. And that came out. So, I mean, that I'm still the only one talking about this, other than, and I do appreciate James Munder finally standing up and having the guts, along with Jennifer Hammonds as well, to throw light on this, to show this. You know, and we're not here with the ultimate goal of saying the government's lying. We're here trying to get justice for 19 dead sailors. We have 17 families between this family, the families of these sailors, the McCain, and the 2 that went overboard aboard the Normandy and the Statham that nobody's even looking at, with no explanations. It's entirely unacceptable. You know, if you're of the opinion that it was inappropriate back in 2012 for our Secretary of State to lie to the families of 4 people in Libya and go out and punch out this false story, this fictitious story about some video, if you think that is inappropriate, how much more inappropriate is this, the death of 19 sailors? And not only is the government pumping out a false story, they're blaming the sailors themselves and now attempting to criminally charge 6 of them. Where's the giant chorus of voices? Where's the giant chorus of condemnation for the provable lies? There's as much provable information here as there was in the case with Libya. Where is everybody? Why isn't anybody standing up? Why does it take me having to do it? Ask yourself that, folks. Where are all the truth tellers? Why are they silent? Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.